of the techniques that Virginia and I have in our portfolio of hats is called wood blocking. It's an ancient, traditional technique where, it's been in process for centuries. And how you start out with this, making these particular kinds of hats, is with these things. This one's called a hood or a cone, and you can see it's kind of a bell shape, and it's made out of, this particular one is made out of sheep's wool. This one is called a cape line. It's a larger format of a hat. It is not a finished hat, as you can see. This particular one is made out of fur felt, so it's a rabbit velour cape line. This block and this one down here, both are called puzzle blocks, which means they are actually puzzle pieces. They're wooden puzzle pieces that fit together to form a complete block. And the reason you do this is that once you have stretched and molded and fitted your hood or your cone or your cape line down onto any kind of a wood block that has an unusual shape and that maybe comes in at the bottom, once it dries, it will not come up off the form unless you can reach in and pull the puzzles apart to allow the form to come apart, which allows you to be able to pull off the creation that you have made. What I do normally is put it in a bucket of water, get it wet, not sopping wet where it's dripping or anything, but I get it wet and I put it in a plastic bag and let it sit there for several hours and let it absorb that water. Because what you want the hat to do is to be very pliable and malleable as you're stretching and pulling it down over these hat blocks. And as you're stretching and pulling down over a hat block, you are using a lot of steam. This is a commercial hat steamer. You could also use an iron. You could also use a tea kettle, as anything that's really producing a lot of steam, and you can get it into your product here to be able to pull and stretch and push it down over these particular wood blocks. That's how you start out with making these kinds of hats. This one would make a cloche, it might make a trilby, it might make a different shorter cap type hat. Where this one, you could actually make a fedora out of it using this kind of a hat shape, or you can make a gambler hat out of it, like the two that are shown here. You can also make a big floppy sun hat if you wanted to use a straw, because you can block straw as well as you can block these animal fibers. Same process, it's just a little bit different look and feel when you get finished with it, of course. So once you have it in a shape that you want, and a lot of times you either pin it or you block it or you use clips or you use roping to pull it in to make sure that everything is staying. You can use weights on the top, sometimes marbles, sometimes you can use a bag of rice if you want to pull that down into the fedora head top to just make sure that they're all secure and staying in their shape. You let it dry, and once you take it off of the hat form, you're going to have your initial hat shape. Most of the time, especially with the fur felts, the velours like this, you don't really have to stiffen them. But sometimes with the wool that comes from the sheep, and depending on the look of your hat, you might want to stiffen it. You can do that in the early process by stiffening the inside of the hat before you actually steam it and put it on your form, or you can come back and stiffen it after you get your hat shape made. If I wanted to take this hat, for example, and stiffen it, I would take it outside because some of the stiffeners are a little bit strong in their smell, and I would just take a paintbrush and stiffen the inside of the hat and let it dry so that it, you don't have any issues where it's pushing down like that. It will be a pretty sturdy hat if you stiffen it.